So you need to create a website. My name is Guy and I'll be going through all the fundamentals necessary for you to design a creative and highly functional website using Wix. It is more than capable of fulfilling your brief. However, even though it's a bit intuitive and notoriously drag and drop, if you haven't used it before, it can take a bit of time getting your head around. So let's cover what's on your screen when you first create a new site. Immediately you'll see that the main working space is divided by dotted lines. Horizontal lines divide each section of the web page, and vertical lines show the area you can actually work in. You'll always want to place assets for your web page within the vertical lines. This is because of different screen sizes. Anything within these two vertical lines show the area that is going to be displayed no matter what device you use to view the web page on. Anything outside of the vertical lines may be cut out of view when viewing the web page on smaller screens, so it's important anything outside of these lines are purely aesthetic and it won't matter too much if they're lost on smaller screen sizes like tablets. The top segment of your web page is known as the header, everything above the orange guideline. This is consistent across all pages, so no matter how many pages you add, the header is going to be the same on all of them. Headers are good for containing the brand logo, menus for navigation, and smaller contact details. Footers, which are at the bottom of the page, operate the exact same way, except it's at the bottom. They tend to contain more detailed contact information, policies, and contact us forms. For your websites, you want to make sure that when you include a contact form, which I believe is on the brief, it is placed in the footer, because if you're going to want a contact us form on multiple pages, it's easier to just have one that appears in the footer for every page than having to create multiple instances. So now you understand the main work area, let's take a look at the menus. At the top here, we have a page navigator. So when you add multiple pages, you'll be able to select which one you want to work on from the drop down here, and the work page is going to load it, which will then allow you to edit it. So currently we only have the home because that is the only page we currently have created. Next to it is the mobile and desktop views. So obviously when you create a website on desktop, phone screens are not going to be able to display it all the same way because of how much smaller they are. So when you've developed a segment of your website on desktop, you'll want to go into the mobile view and rearrange it so that it's suitable for mobile phones. Whatever the website looks like on mobile view is how a mobile phone would load the website, and whatever the website looks like on desktop view is how a desktop would load the website. So always make sure to check mobile view after developing a segment. Again, we'll be building a quick example website after the overview where I'll be able to show you this a little clearer in practice. These are your standard undo and redo buttons. This is your zoom out, so you'll be able to see the entire web page all zoomed out and then identify bits that may be out of place. But this is what you're going to be using the most. This is the toolbar. The toolbar, when you put assets on the workspace, you'll be able to use the toolbar to rearrange and align things. So you'll be able to move elements in front or behind each other, center them or align them to the left or the right, the rotation angle, etc., all that stuff. You'll be also able to resize them and reposition them, which is always handy. On the left side, here is where we can actually add things. So let's just go back to the desktop view. As you can see, there is a lot of things we can just naturally add. So strips is basically the dividers of a web page. So each time you build a segment on your web page, you'll want to divide each section into strips, which will be a lot easier to understand when I'm actually showing them. Of course, we have all the things you'd expect. So there's text, there's images, buttons, etc., basic shapes. A lot of things Wix have already pre-built. So you have contact forms already built in, which you can just drag and drop to your site. So the very first thing you're going to want to do if you want to add something, the first thing you should do is always check whether Wix has it pre-built. Because if they do have it pre-built, you're going to want to use that instead, rather than going to the hassle of making it on your own. The assets here are made to be used, so use them. Next, we have pages, which just lists the pages you have, and you can add new pages from this menu. And then finally, we have themes. And I say finally because the rest of the things aren't really relevant to you or just shortcuts to things that you already have access to in the add page anyway. But the themes are very important. And it's going to be the first thing you want to do when you start making your website, the very first thing. Themes make it so that every time you add an asset to your website, Wix will change its color scheme to match the theme. So it saves a lot of time from manually setting your own colors. Themes also do the exact same thing for fonts. So when you add text, it'll automatically set the size and the font depending on the heading or paragraph you chose. So for example, if I want to add a heading 1 to my workspace here, it's automatically going to be 60 pixels and in the font Montserrat. And so that makes themes really easy and streamlined because then you're not having to mess around setting the fonts and the colors for every single thing every time. Instead, Wix is automatically going to do it for you because you've set it. So rather than just talking about the different functionalities, let's actually go through them. I'm not going to focus too much on making the website really design heavy because that's not the point. The video would take hours if I stressed designing, so I'm going to construct something pretty basic but functional. And then you will have a much better idea at all the different things Wix can do. So the example website I've decided I'm going to build is for a travel agency, which is going to be advertising holidays. So we're going to need a large banner at the top of the page, a showcase for popular locations that the agency advertises, a review section, and a contact us section. We'll then want individual pages for the destinations and maybe a booking page, but I don't think that'll be necessary. Obviously, for the purpose of an example website, it's going to be extremely small and simple, and obviously there will be no ability to actually buy or book anything. So first things, as I said, we are going to decide on the themes. I've already done this in advance because setting this manually would just take up way too much time on the video. But you can see that for the fonts at least, I've chosen Montserrat, which is really clean, and you can see the example of it here where it says heading. For colors, I've chosen this color scheme because I think it just goes really well kind of with a seaside kind of beach aesthetic. So to demonstrate how themes actually work, I'm just going to add color to the page background. As you can see, Wix is going to immediately bring up the shades of the theme colors we picked. So we've got all the blues, the greens, and the yellows, and different variants of them. So I'm just going to choose this blue because it's really nice. And if we go back into themes and I was to change that blue, you'll see that the page background actually changes with it. So this is how it can become really streamlined and really easy. Because instead of having to go through every single asset and change its color manually, you can just do it from the themes. So I'm just going to cancel that because we don't actually want to change it. So let's consider the website's actual content. So our first segment is going to be the banner. So this is the first thing that people will see when they load the website. So we want it to be flashy and engaging and generally appealing to look at. And typically, we'll just find a fun, relevant image and put text over it in an empty space with a couple of buttons for navigation if necessary. So the first thing we're going to do is going to add a strip. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So I said for this website, we might want a banner and we might want the popular destinations, etc., etc. So for each of those segments, they're going to want an individual strip for each of them. So this strip is going to be dedicated for the banner. Now you'll see those vertical dotted lines are back. So everything that we want to be visible on the banner has to be in between these vertical lines. If they're not going to be visible on all screen sizes. So this can be a color. This can be an image. This could even be a video. But for simplicity purposes, we're going to choose an image. I already have one that I have pre-downloaded. So we're just going to add that. When you try to upload an image, you're going to get this. You can get stock images from media from Wix, but my favorite one is Unsplash. Unsplash is kind of like a Creative Commons website in the sense that you can just go on Unsplash and people will have just uploaded their images, which are often very professional, as you can see, and they are free to use, and you have all the rights to use them in your website, so use it. And then if you have images already on your hard drive, you can upload them straight here. So that's what I've done. It will be in my downloads, this JPEG file, which I thought would be pretty nice for a travel agency that we just use as the banner image. And you can see that Wix has immediately just put it in. Now, if you wanted the banner to be bigger or smaller, you can just drag it and the image will kind of automatically resize itself, as you can see. And now we can see exactly what parts of the image is going to be captured. So on bigger screen size, we may be able to see these leaves on the right-hand side, but when we go into smaller screen sizes and the website has to compress itself, they may be lost. But everything in the vertical lines are guaranteed to stay. And that's the important part. So let's go ahead and just add some text to our banner. So we'll go to the add section, a little bit of text here, and we'll add heading 1. And as you can see, it's in that nice Montserrat font and it's at 60 pixels, so the theme has kicked in. That's how it should work. We can change the font, we can change the size, so we can override the themes if we so wish. But obviously the purpose of the themes is that we kind of want it to automatically go the way we want. So this is absolutely fine. We may want to add some provisional buttons as well that would link to other pages, but for now we're just going to change how this heading looks. So we just want a kind of generic statement about traveling. So let's put your next getaway starts here. A very kind of typical slogan for a travel agency. And obviously you can resize it, make the text box bigger, all stuff that you're probably familiar with from other programs like even Word. You can obviously edit just individual words in a sentence. And you can just kind of rearrange it to look however you want it to. Personally, I quite like it. But again, it's not meant to be very design heavy. Just make it look a bit more uniform. So as you have font color changing, you can give it highlights, you can even link it so that if you want people to click the text, it will take them to another page. Not necessary, but it is a thing. And we might want a call to action button. A call to action button is a button where someone, it's a button that people will immediately see and you want them to click on it. So buttons, again, just from the add section, already built in. So here we can change the text, we can change the fonts, etc. We don't want the button to just say button, so we might want it to say see our destinations. And then this button would link to a page where it has different destinations on that we would obviously make later. Sometimes Wix can be a little bit slow, but it's not a big issue. Obviously, you would change this yourself to look a little bit more fancy on the design aspect. I'm just kind of doing this to show you the actual functionality. So it may not look the best. I would probably change this text to probably be a little bit nicer, not blend in with the background, etc. I definitely changed the button design. Speaking of which, with buttons, you can change the shape. So through design and customized design, you immediately get all these different options. So you can even change like the roundness of the corners. For example, if I was changing it to 30, suddenly the button becomes rounded. You can give it a shadow. You can change the angle of the shadow, the distance of the shadow, the blur, etc. And you can add multiple actually, so it's really versatile in that sense. Of course, if you want to change the color of the button, the themes will appear immediately first. So let's just give it a nice blue background. and make the text darker so that it can show up on it. Might even bold it just to make it really visible. And the interesting thing about buttons is that there is a hover. So if someone is on the website and they hover over the button can change so that it's obvious what it is. You know, if it just stayed static, people may not recognize it's a button. So if we were to hover over the button, we might want it to go a darker shade of blue just to fit the color scheme. And we might want the text to go white. And now if we preview the page, you notice that when we hover over the button, it changes its design. So moving on to the section under the banner, we might want a segment dedicated to promoting the company. So positive attributes that state why the customer should book with this company and not somebody else's. So for that, we're just going to keep it short with a horizontal list. We're going to divide the next strip into multiple columns, each with its own individual guidelines, and put a different selling point in each section. So instead of just one portion of the strip being used, like in the banner where it's one middle section, we're going to divide the strip into 4 sections. 4 also happens to be the maximum amount. So if we just add a new strip, this is as complicated as it gets when it comes to strips. If we go to layout, we can add columns. And we are going to want 4 of these because we're going to have 4 sections. So you can see we have 4 individual columns. And within columns, we have our own little vertical strip. Those vertical dotted lines back again. This is how you maximize the amount of control you have over the layout. Instead of the website being one very long line down the middle, you can kind of split it up a little bit. Again, everything inside the vertical lines are going to be visible on all screen sizes, and none of it will be cut out. So let's just add a little bit of text to it. You know, let's go for a heading 4 because it's smaller. We don't want it to be heading 1, and attach it to a column. And obviously make sure everything stays within the dotted lines. So we might want to identify the company because it's a travel agency. We might want to identify it with safety. So we'll just put safety in there and we'll align the text to the middle. And then we might want a very small paragraph on, well, safety. Shorten it and resize as much as you need. A lot of this will be trial and error. You're not going to get things right first time. You are going to get sizes wrong. Just keep previewing the site and you'll see how it looks, and just keep readjusting it until it kind of lands in a position you want. So this is looking kind of bland. So we're just going to add a little decoration to it. And because it's about security, we might want a padlock. And usually Wix is very good for having built-in things. So here we can see there's some vector art of a padlock. It's actually quite a lot of padlocks. So let's just choose this one and add it to the page and resize it. And that's one of the columns completed. Now, we're going to want 4 of these, 1 for each column. A great thing we can do is by holding Shift, we can select each individual asset and group them together. And when we group them together, they become one entity. And when they're one entity, we can align them using the toolbar to the center perfectly. And then grouped objects can be copied and they can be pasted. So if I just realign that and reselect, if I press Control and C, it'll copy, and if I click Control and V, it'll paste it. And then you can just put them in each individual column. Obviously, we would make the content different for each one. We're not going to have safety posted 4 times, but you know, for time purposes, we're just going to keep them all the same. And obviously, we can align each one so that they're all uniform. Keeping everything consistent is really key when it comes to this type of design. because if it looks skewed, if they're not all equal, it's going to look a little bit off, but that's why the toolbar exists. And then if we preview it, it all kind of runs across. Very nice. Now, you might be thinking, if it goes onto a smaller screen size, are we going to lose bits of it because, it's right at the edge? That isn't what's going to happen. It's going to be the spaces in between that get lost. So as you can see, everything in the vertical lines is going to be kept. Anything that's not in the vertical lines is what's going to be removed when we go into smaller screen sizes. So what we can do to actually showcase this is when we publish a site, we will be able to view the site. So you'd want to click View Site and then publish it. And then it'll show you exactly what the website's going to look like when you publish it. And what you can do is you can then click Control, Shift, and I, which is going to bring up this little inspector panel. And click Toggle Device Toolbar, and then you'll be able to see what it looks like on different screen sizes. And I think for the smallest screen size you can go on a desktop version is the average size of a laptop. And the average size of a laptop is 1366 by 768. And then you can see how it's going to look on the smaller screen sizes. And as you can see, they've all become a lot more compressed, a lot more closer together. So none of it's getting cut off. The gaps between them are just getting shortened. You may have to refresh a couple of times for this to work because it can be a bit clunky, but that's generally the gist of it. So if we just close that and go back to our editor, and everything should go back to normal. Now I'm going to go through one of the greatest functions in website building, which is repeaters. So we're just going to add another strip for this, and I'm just going to change the strip background so it splits up the website just a little bit. I'm actually going to make this white just to so if I go to the page background and just make the page itself white again, and then we can see that strip just a little bit clearer. And just remove that. As I say, it can be very trial and error, the whole process. So we have this strip. This is where we're going to put in repeaters, which, as I said, is the greatest function when it comes to website building, in my opinion. Repeaters are great if you need multiple instances of similar things. Repeaters are essentially a list of items with the exact same design and layout, but you can change the content itself in each one. For example, if you were making an online store, you wouldn't want to have to make an individual box for each product. With repeaters, you can just make one, and then the website copies the design for each item you have. So if we go to add, they are located in lists and then repeaters. And then this repeater actually fits our page aesthetic quite well. In our case, we'd probably want a repeater for displaying each destination. So let's just add a new strip, and to break up the page into its sections, we'll just keep it as one main column. So we won't do what we did the last time. We will just keep it as one. And like I said, this repeater really fits quite well because it's about destinations. So after you dropped in the repeater is pre-built in Wix, but obviously you would just change the content or amend the design to however you want it for your website. Actually, nothing really needs to be changed about this one, but I'll still give kind of the run through about it. So let's just make this strip a little bit bigger so the repeater can actually fit in. We can obviously compress the repeater a little bit more. So in manage items, we can actually we can make more of these. So if we wanted 6, we could have 6, and then we just change the content in each one. We're going to keep it at 3 though, because we really don't need any more than that. So we'll just remove the copies we just made. We can also change the space in between repeaters. So you see how there's this kind of division between them? What we can do is we can go into layout, and then we can change the space between them so they're a little closer together or more spread out. But we're just gonna keep it at kind of this healthy distance. We can then change the alignment. We might want it centered to the left, might want it centered to the right, but we're just gonna keep it all centered. If I make any design changes within the repeater, you'll see that the design occurs across all the items. So if I move this box, it'll move across all of them. If I delete this text field, it's going to delete across all of them. If I add a decorative box, I should just go to decorative for that, not interactive. It's going to get added to all of them. So obviously you have to be quite careful that if you're adding things to repeaters, you have to keep in mind that it's going to display in every item, not just one. If you wanted only specific repeaters to have specific things, you'd have to code it yourself, which obviously I do not have the time to go through today. The last thing when it comes to repeaters that I want to talk about is hover interactions. A hover interaction is something that you don't see very often, but if you wanted to kind of just give it a little bit more class, a little bit more effect to it, you can actually add a hover interaction kind of similar to the button where if the cursor hovers over it, an effect happens. So we can make it grow, for example. And we can customize the amount of growth or kind of where it grows to, but that is generally what will happen. Now, you have to remember, because it's a repeater and the design carries across all of them, if you add a hover effect to one, it's going to add it to all of them. So now we have the destinations, let's actually add some pages for each of them. So as I said before, it's in the pages section, and then we would just add 3 pages. And we would usually just add a blank page. You can use templates. Wouldn't recommend them though. So let's just name them after the repeaters we had. So we had Magical Deserts. We had Exotic Urbanism. And we finally had Misty Mountains. Now, I'm not going to do too much with these pages because most of the stuff you need to know I've already done on the homepage. What I am going to do is just kind of give them a look. So we'll just add a strip. And just a picture of a desert, which will work well. Let's choose this one. This looks quite nice. And just add a bit of text called Magical Deserts. And we're really not going to worry about this because I'm a bit conscious of time. And just center it nicely. And maybe expand it. And this is our Magical Deserts page. That's all we need. And then we would do the same across Exotic Urbanism and Misty Mountains. I'll just do one more for the sake of showing you how to link pages. So we've got image, and let's go with a nice urban place. So we've got Tokyo, and hopefully Wix will load it. Yep. And that'll be our Exotic Urbanism page. We don't really need to do too much with this at all. Because the only thing I really want to show you is how we link pages. So now that we've got 2 pages, let's link them. So if I was to go down to the repeater, let's say here's Magical Deserts. If you would obviously, if you clicked on this, you'd want the website to take you to this page. So what we can do is add a button to the repeater, and it will obviously automatically give a button to every single repeater, every single item in the repeater. So you can see the button appears in all of them. And we're just going to click this button here, which says link. And then we can choose a page for it to link to. So obviously we want magical deserts to link to magical deserts. We're going to want exotic urbanism to link to exotic urbanism. And then we want misty mountains to link to misty mountains. And then if we preview this, we'll be able to see it happen in action. So magical deserts takes us to the magical deserts page. And that is how you would link multiple pages. If you remember back on the home page, we had this button. You might want a page that would have all the destinations listed. We don't have one of them. We don't need to because I've already shown you how to link pages, but you just do it the exact same way. The final things I'd like to talk through are your header. So for your header, you can have menu navigation here. So you open, add to site, go to menu and anchor, and then you can add a menu. And you can see at the top here, all the pages we've made have automatically been filled out on the menu. And then if you were to preview this, you can take yourself directly to the page you want. So that's how menus work. Very easy, very simple. And finally, contact us forms. Contact us forms are so easy to do because Wix already has them. And you're going to want to use these because making a form through manual inputs is beyond, the brief completely. And what we do is we just extend the footer so it's a little bit bigger. And you just quite literally go to add, contact and forms, and put it in. It might take a minute to load depending on your Wi-Fi connection. As you can see, mine is a little bit slow right now. And then you just want to drag it into the footer. Like I said, Wix can be a bit slow, so that was depending on your internet connection. So that was just a bit jumpy there. But as you can see, that's not actually gone into the footer. You can see there is a button that appears called Move to Footer. Click that, it'll go in. And now, if we were to go to another page, because it's in the footer, and footers obviously transfer across all pages, just like the header does, you will see it at the bottom of each page. So there it is. One thing I did just forget to mention about the header, which I just saw there, is you can change how they interact with the page. So you can make it freeze, or you can make it scroll with the site. So with scroll with the site, it's going to disappear the moment you scroll past it. If you have it as a freeze, then it's going to remain at the top, regardless of if you're scrolling or not. And the header and the footer remains consistent across all pages, as that comes in really useful instead of having to make multiple contact us forms. Video and music will obviously allow you to add videos if you wanted them. I know there are some video editing tasks within the brief. And that is all that you would really need to know. The most important thing is I've given you the basics and the fundamentals of how to add things, how to look at the workspace, how to link and create pages, columns, which are going to come in very handy, and repeaters, which are the main things I think you'll need to complete your brief. But that doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to them. Obviously, if you want to, the most important thing is you're really creative with this. So I didn't show anything to do with video and music. I didn't show anything to do with anchors, but you're welcome to try and experiment. That's what this is about. But what I've shown you today is enough to get you started. But obviously, I encourage everyone to be really creative with what they're doing and try out a lot of different designs and functionalities that you could probably attempt with Wix. Most things you'd want to do is available to do through Wix. So I definitely encourage just creativity and trying your hand at different things. A final thing we need to do then is just check the mobile version. So we've got your website made, all you really want on it. You switch to mobile and you'll see it's not quite how you'd want it to look. Things are a little bit out of proportion. This is really fixable. When it comes to mobile version, it's not really about adding new things. It's just about rearranging it so it looks functional on a really small screen. So this banner, we'd probably want to make bigger. We'd probably want to make this text bigger and centralize it. We'd probably have the button further down here. And I would probably change this text color. Not that I'm going to do that right now. But the mobile version really is more about rearranging more than anything. So for example, what was a normal size on desktop is now really big for mobile. So we'd probably want to shrink these. And you'd have to go through and do all of them individually unless they were using a repeater. For example, if I want to make this smaller, which I would, so let's just make everything a lot smaller because this is too big for a mobile size. You can see $600 is going off the side of the page. If I wanted to make, you see it's all gone smaller on all the different boxes. If I want to make the box itself smaller, they all go smaller because it's a repeater. These we made individually, not on a repeater. So we'd have to do these, one at a time, which is why repeaters are very, very efficient and fast when it comes to website design, and people really like them. I really like them. But yeah, mobile size is really more about rearranging more than anything. But other than that, that is all you need to know when it comes to website design for your brief. The contact us form automatically does itself. So when someone fills this in, it goes to the back end. You don't have to do anything with this, just put it in. But I've hopefully given you all the things you need to get started on your brief. Hopefully you understand the workspace. Hopefully you understand all the menus. And have fun creating your own website.